We need to figure out what that thing is. We don't need to tinker and change things. We need to empathize with the user, see them as a person who's trying to make real progress in the world, as opposed to just a number or user ID on our analytics dashboard, and figure out what is the reason. Hey everyone, Nathan Hudson here, founder of Perceptycs, where we are building the #1 growth agency for mobile subscription apps in my biased opinion. Now I'm very excited for this one. This video is all about getting more users to convert through your subscription app funnel, whether that's an in-app funnel or a web-to-app funnel. What I'm going to share applies equally to both. Now, I am going to pre-warn you, this is not a tips and tricks video. This is not a growth hack. This is not a playbook, onboarding tactic, or paywall pricing trick to get more users to subscribe. This is a strategic way of thinking to help you dissect growth blockers, remove bottlenecks, and improve conversion rates across any onboarding funnel. So if you click this hoping to get a growth hack, thinking you can implement some things in 5 minutes that are going to skyrocket your revenue, you can go now. And for everyone else that's left, let's dig into this, let's call it funnel philosophy. So this video is designed for those people who have subscription apps live in the App Store already, have paying subscribers, and are looking to improve their onboarding conversion rate. It's for teams and operators working on apps, making money, right? It can be a massive range, right? As long as you're making, I would say, 10K MRR plus, it's going to be relevant. Arguably, it's going to be relevant for apps that don't charge, right? But the more revenue, the more applicable this is going to be. It's not for people who haven't launched. You can watch this if you haven't launched, but you're probably going to think that I'm just spouting some mumbo jumbo that's just wasting your time. But anyway, so anyone who has worked on growing a subscription mobile app will know that one of the most important things, if not the most important thing to do, especially in the early days, is to get new installs paying as much as possible on a subscription plan. Yes, technically it's improving LTV as well, but initial conversion is super, super important. And we look at metrics like average revenue per user, average revenue per paying user, install to sub rate, even funnel metrics like onboarding completion rate and paywall conversion rate alongside these. Essentially, we're focused on KPIs that tell us whether or not users are paying, and if so, how much money are we making from our subscribers. And the experiments we focus on are centered around driving these numbers up in most cases, converting more new paid subscribers and converting them onto higher price subscription plans. This is one of the core functions of a growth team, and it's essentially the only thing that matters for a growth team focused on acquisition. Now, granted, this is also super broad, right? It's going to cover top of funnel traffic, page UA, ASO, onboarding optimization, paywall optimization, product activation. All of these things go into improving those metrics I just spoke about. Now, at Perceptycs, that's exactly what we focus on. This is exactly what we help our clients with. And since it's such a broad domain, there are a lot of variables to consider. But one of the key areas you'll be working on is your onboarding journey. You're going to have an onboarding journey. If you see my other videos, maybe a survey, and it may be a lot of questions in that onboarding journey. Maybe it won't be. Maybe it'll be a tutorial or a demo or something else. But the idea is you're going to have some sort of onboarding process to take your new users from I've just installed that app to I understand this and I'm using it. That's the onboarding process. Now, a lot of people's approach to onboarding optimization, hey, I am not pointing fingers. I have also done this, right? And there have been times where this would be my go-to approach historically, is to spy on competitors, right? We'll look at the big apps, we'll look at our competitors, and we'll copy them. That's essentially following a playbook, right? It's like, hey, we've got this list of things that we should probably try that we've compiled from loads of different creators, from LinkedIn posts and other people, and this is the playbook, and we're going to run through each of these because at some point we're going to land on the combination that just works for us, and ta-da, we've optimized that onboarding journey. Now, outside of playbooks, competitor inspiration, copying people, tips, tricks, blah, 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 how can we go about actually improving our onboarding journey? This is my onboarding philosophy. Let me start by asking a question. Let's say a user has already engaged with you top of funnel. They've seen your ads and your screenshots. They've downloaded your app. They've begun to engage with your product. They know what problem you solve, and they know how you solve it. That's super important. They know what problem you solve, and they know how you solve it. If I ask you what's next for them and what should you do next, what would you say? Right? You're probably going to say something like this. They need to complete onboarding, or they need to try out the product, or they need to start a trial, or they need to subscribe. And these aren't wrong. They're all correct, right? They do need to try the product out. They do need to start a trial. They do need to onboard if they haven't already, and they do need to pay and subscribe. And if I look at my Mixpanel dashboard, that's exactly how I'll be looking at the funnel. I'll be thinking, okay, what's next? Yeah, next is start trial. But this is a shallow way of thinking, and I want you to go deep with me, right? As I say, they're all correct, but it's shallow. Now, we default to, as product people, tech people, growth people, people who work on technical products, we default to thinking of user progress in terms of funnel steps. They do this, and they do this, and this happens, right? It's a funnel, and that's what we look at. We pull it up in our dashboard, we look at it everywhere, it's funnel, funnel, funnel. And sure, that's great, but it's also very dangerous. Why is it dangerous? The reason is we start to think of users going from one step to the next, from one screen to the next screen, as if they're robots. We think of our users like robots, and our funnel is a machine, right? It's just a machine. We're printing money, we're building a money printer, right? And things become more binary than they actually are. They either did or they didn't. They either did do this or they didn't do this. They did do this or they didn't do this. And something really happens when we land on they didn't do this. We start to think, what is it I did wrong that meant they didn't do the next thing? Or what is this that's broken with our product that meant they didn't do the next thing? What is it I need to change to get them to do the next things? What do I need to add to get them to do the next thing? And we're fixated on getting them to go from this step to this step. What is it I need to do? What does I need to do? And these aren't bad questions, right? These are great questions. These are good questions. Any good growth person is going to approach things with this mindset because we're digging into the user journey. But there is one core problem with this. We lack context. Right? We have no idea why any of this is happening. We just know that something isn't working the way we want it to do, and now we're going to brainstorm. And what happens is oftentimes we put our hand in our pocket and we pull something out of the playbook. I need to add more social proof. I need to remove this screen. I need to reduce the price. I need to change the type of social proof I'm using. I need to test 3 plans instead of 2. I need to test weekly, monthly, quarterly instead of annual, quarterly, monthly. I need to change the order of my plans. And we begin speculating and generating hypotheses of all these things that may or may not work. Now, this will make sense to those of you who work on sub-app funnels. A lot of the times it will work, right? You'll try something and you were right, or you had a hunch because of something you've seen before and you test it and it works. But oftentimes that isn't the case. We may actually improve step C to D, but we don't improve the overall conversion of our funnel. We just kick the ball down the road, right? We push the problem down the road. Now, I used to listen to a lot of content where people would talk about this, just pushing the problem down the road. And I kind of agreed with it. I didn't agree with it fully. I thought if we fix the problem, we fix the problem, right? We fix it. But no, if we're thinking of funnel steps and we just fix the funnel step, doesn't mean that we've improved the overall conversion, right? Big picture, we haven't fixed anything necessarily. And there are an infinite number of experiments that we can run. There are an infinite number of screen combinations, social proof ideas, price tests, etc. And we can't just A/B our tests through all of them. There's not enough time. So we're going to struggle to drive meaningful growth. And we're going to struggle to optimize our onboarding funnels efficiently. And it comes down to this one little but big word that we're ignoring. Little in there it's a little word, big in there it's a big concept. Friction. There is a reason that users aren't converting. There may be multiple reasons that users aren't converting. There is something holding them back and stopping them from making the progress that we want to see. And we need to figure out what that thing is. We don't need to tinker and fix and change things. We need to empathize with the user, see them as a person who's trying to make real progress in the world, as opposed to just a number or user ID on our analytics dashboard, and figure out what is the reason that they aren't converting. Not just from this step to this step, but from this step to this step, right? Imagine we've got install paywall. Not just why aren't they going from, screen 3, 4, 5 and they drop off around 6, 7. What is it that's missing in this bigger picture here? So we have to zoom out. Now I want to make a distinction. I want to distinguish between experimenting to increase conversion rates from screen to screen and experimenting to remove friction. Technically, it's all experimentation. It's the same thing. But there is a difference, right, in mindset and approach. Both are important, and I'll make videos in the future on the former, right, before someone rants in the comments saying that they scaled their app to X 100,000 a month in recurring revenue from step-by-step funnel experiments, and I know nothing, right? Before I get attacked in the comments, of course that works. You can absolutely do those things. There are a lot of other things you can do, right? And if you improve the rates, it may work. But as I said a minute ago, we may just be pushing the problem down the road. So when we zoom out and we think about our original goal, we realize this. I need to get more users who know what problem I solve and how I solve it to pay me money to solve it. That's high level what we're trying to do. And anything that gets in the way of that, regardless of where it is in the funnel, we can classify as friction, right? There is an objection. There is friction. There is something holding them back. The paradigm shift happens when we recognize that thinking in terms of friction focuses on the root cause of the bad metrics as opposed to the potential solutions that may or may not fix the metrics. We have to understand the bad metrics and be obsessed with understanding why users are dropping off before we can actually fix the issue. So there are 3 questions to answer, and we're going to cover them right now. 1, how do we identify what the friction is? 2, why does the friction exist? 3, how do we get rid of the friction? Now, simply put, spotting friction is easy, right? Seeing that there is some friction present is easy. Our conversion rates are low. We have lots of drop-offs. Something's broken. It's easy to do that, right? You can compare your app metrics to benchmarks to identify where friction might be present. But that doesn't tell us what the friction is, or why it exists, or how to get rid of it. How do we actually identify what the friction is? Now, there are a few ways to do this, and they all revolve around capturing qualitative data. In-app surveys, specifically ones where we have open text responses, right, free text, and we let the users just rant. App Store reviews, another form of free text feedback. Customer interviews, right, speaking to customers. Essentially, we need to hear from the user what the problem is, and we want them to be as open and honest as possible. We don't want to lead them on in any ways or lead them to say certain things, hence multiple choice surveys aren't a good option here. We need to understand what the problem is, and the only way we can know that for sure is for them to tell us. Everything else is speculation. Side note, there is a massive challenge with what I'm saying, which is that it's really, really not easy to get this data. When people don't care about your product and they not churn necessarily, but they don't activate, right? They give up early on, they really don't care. And getting these people to fill in a survey, let alone dedicate time to speak with you, is extremely difficult. And unless there's something that's really broken with your app or really angers them, they're probably not going to leave a negative review and explain that to you and serve it to you on a silver platter. But you should be spending time on this, specifically if you're focusing on onboarding optimization, right? Like, despite how hard it might be, you should spend time figuring out how can we get in front of these people and how can we figure this out. You can incentivize them, which is tricky in its own right and comes with a whole other set of considerations. But essentially, you need to get in these users' head. People might argue and say, oh, asking questions is silly. They don't know what they want. Users don't know what they want. Henry Ford said, if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses. Absolutely. If you ask people what they want, they will say, give it to me for free, thank you, goodbye. I'm not saying that you should ask them what they want. I'm saying that you should ask them what the reason is for them not purchasing or starting a trial. Don't literally ask them that directly, right? You have to be smart about how you go about things because extracting the truth is a skill here. But we need to get inside their heads. If you can get inside their heads, you'll know what it is that was holding them back and why they were held back, right? You'll know. You won't need to speculate. Let's go through some examples. Number 1, I can't afford it because it's Christmas soon and I'm saving. So that's seasonality and price. I can't afford this because it's too expensive for me. Maybe it's the price, maybe it's the value. We didn't communicate enough value to justify the price, but it gives us an indication of where to head. I'm not emotionally ready to use this product. I mentioned this in a previous video, this I'm not emotionally ready to use this product as a piece of friction. And it may sound vague. Essentially, I worked with an app that helped people overcome their grief when they lost a loved one. And one of the things about grief is that there is a process to getting to a place where you're prepared to face your loss, right? You can't just rush mourning and grieving. No matter how many emails you send or what growth hacks you use, you can't rush that process. Some people just are not ready to buy your product. So there's other friction involved. Another one might be, I don't have time to use this product, and I think in order to make progress, I need to use your app at least X times a week. I could only do X over 5. Oh, I get what you do, I just don't understand exactly how it works. Oh, the app looks great, but I think it's more for people who XYZ and ABC, I need to DEF. Right, these are objections, but it also indicates the presence of friction. You see, objections and friction, they're kind of the same thing, but objections make it about us. They're objections to buying our product. Friction keeps the focus on them. They have an issue or something is in their way that's preventing them from moving. I need to alleviate that friction so they can move forward in their buying decision process. So that's how we can identify what the friction is. What about figuring out why the friction exists? Again, depending on what the friction is, you may find different reasons for it existing. Some will be in your control, others not so much. I didn't decide for it to be Christmas. It just is Christmas. I didn't do anything. I can't change that. I can't change Christmas, right? But I can change the relationship between price and seasonality by discounting. Or another example might be, they have the belief that losing weight requires them to work out X times a week, but they're really busy with work and family right now, so they just can't do it at the moment. They just don't think now's the right time, but maybe later. In this case, there is a pre-existing perception and a current circumstance that are clashing. Your mixed panel dashboard doesn't tell you that they're busy with their family and work at the moment and their boss is really angry with them and they're at risk of losing their job and everything's a nightmare and because of that they can't pay for your product. Mixed panel can't tell me that. Well, I also can't change that, right? I'm not their boss. But I can tell them they only need to work out X times a week and they only need to do it for this amount of time to make progress. That will remove some friction. It will get rid of that objection. Or another example is, I get what you do, I just don't understand exactly how it works. Well, this is an easy one, right? We clearly didn't do a good enough job of explaining how our product works because our messaging was purely benefit focused maybe, and these people actually care about how it works, so we need to figure that out. Let's brainstorm some ideas around how we can get better at that. See, notice how now the brainstorm comes in. Once we've identified what the friction is and why it exists, then we can start to figure out how to get rid of it. Maybe we show them a tutorial. Maybe we have an interactive demo. Maybe we show them how it works in our ad creatives. Maybe we explain the process through the onboarding journey. Different things. And the other one I said was, I can't afford this because it's too expensive for me. And I mentioned, is it price or is it value? Sure, we can just give a discount or offer, but what we can do when we're speaking to them is we can figure out, well, what is it that you think you're paying for? Oh, I'm paying for a fitness app. What if I told you you're paying to get in the best shape of your life? Would you pay $200 to get in the best shape of your life, look better than ever, and feel way more confident when you go on holiday next year? They'll probably say yes. You see, here what we're doing is we're figuring out what is it I've done across the user journey, what perception do they have and what is their current context, and what do I need to change or alleviate or modify in order to make things smoother. What we're doing here is learning about the friction and why it exists, figuring out whether or not it's something we can even influence, and if so, generating hypotheses to remove it. That's the process. So how do we actually improve conversion rates in onboarding? How do we do this? Now, we've already touched on it really, because it's hard to talk about what and why the friction is without thinking of ideas how to get rid of it. One thing I would say is if you are speaking to users and you're going through this process, try not to ask them for suggestions on what to do to fix it or help them, because they'll send you off on a rabbit hole. And again, shout out to Henry Ford. But yeah, in the context of onboarding journeys specifically and conversion rates from install to start trial, this is the mindset to adopt. You want to look at the funnel and think, through this entire journey from install to the paywall, I need to remove these friction points so that I can handle these objections in order to make it easy for the user to pass through my funnel and start a trial. Right? If you speak to enough users and really dive into this, you'll be able to really build a friction backlog, if you will, right? A backlog of all the friction points that are holding users back and all the objections that you have to tackle, and then ideas to tackle each of those. So throughout the onboarding journey, you want to make sure that you address those friction points and remove them. If we're looking at things from the perspective of increasing install to paid subscription, then we want to extend this through the trial period. From the moment they install to the end of their trial period, I need to remove these friction points to handle the objections so that users are ready to pay me. And that's the reason I went through the examples before, is because it shows that they aren't the same for all products. They aren't even the same at all times of the year. In some cases, you never would have guessed what the issue was. In other cases, it's blindingly obvious, but you just didn't think of it. Either way, you need to know what that is. Now, once you've got your friction backlog and you're actually proactively running these experiments, you'll need to experiment with where and when in the funnel you tackle each friction point. So when you speak to users, making a note of the progress they did make, actually screen by screen and step by step across your funnel, can be helpful, because you may see trends arise at certain points in time that, yeah, people don't really have this blocker until they actually start the trial and then they realize they can't do X, Y, Z, and then they're canceling. That's friction, right? Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, this friction-first approach to onboarding optimization does away with just obsessing over funnel steps, and it makes onboarding optimization about understanding the user's context, identifying what is holding them back from converting, and working to remove those blockers so that they are primed to pay. So that is my philosophy on onboarding optimization. As I said, it was a way more high-level, strategic, philosophical video as opposed to just tips and tricks. But I think it was practical. Hopefully you think it was practical too, and hopefully this video has been helpful for you. Please do like and subscribe so the channel can grow. If there's anyone you think should watch this video, anyone you think is going to hate this video or love this video or whatever it may be, please do share it with them. And as always, leave any questions or thoughts in the comments, and I will see you next time.